Hi, my name is Will Kryler, and today I'll be presenting on student athlete transitions out of college sport. My research aimed to answer two questions. First, what factors are the best predictors for determining the level of difficulty a college football player will have transitioning out of sports? And second, how does being a postgraduate college football player positively or negatively affect the transition from student athlete to professional career? So, the purpose of my research was first to educate athletic academic advisors and administrators, since these are the people that are in place to help our student athletes with career development, professional development, and academics. Second, to create a more effective transition process for student athletes. If we can find the problems with the transition and the solutions with the transition, well, then we can be able to create a more smooth transition for the athletes. And lastly, but most importantly, to improve the former student athletes' well being. As we'll see, there's research that indicates they have a hard time with this transition, and anything we can do to make their lives better once they leave campus, then we should do it. So, when we look at student athletes, they are a unique student group. There's a lot of student groups on campus, but athletes, they have certain responsibilities and obligations. They have games that they have to prepare for, they have practices, they have meetings, they have a lot of places that they have to be at certain times. And this limits their opportunities. They don't get to experience a normal student life. They don't get to go to a lot of the activities and events that normal students get to go to. They don't get to create the same social networks. If you're on a team and you are in a certain major and there's nobody else in that major on the team, well, you're still going to spend most of your time with your teammates because that's naturally what student athletes do. And they don't get to build those social networks that are going to help them in their professional life. And then lastly, career path exploration. Since there is so much emphasis on sports and performing in sports, they don't get a lot of time to actually explore what they want to do for the rest of their lives. So when it comes to the transition, there have been a lot of struggles related to the transition. And personally, I played football at UNLV, and I know that once I was done playing sports, it was really tough for me to get out of that mindset and to no longer have a team, no longer have coaches helping me and scheduling out my days. And it was tough. It was really tough to all of a sudden try to become a professional. And the thing with this transition period is that it happens at a different time for everyone. The most common is loss of eligibility, which is when you have finally played your 4 years in college and you are now forced to go into the real world. You're no longer allowed to play. You could also have a career ending injury, which could happen at any moment. It could happen your freshman year, and all of a sudden, you no longer get to play the sport that you once loved. And then deselection. If you do finish playing and you want to go play professionally, there's not a guarantee that you're going to get to play professionally. And once nobody selects you, you're then forced to go in to the workforce. So when we look at football players specifically, they actually have the highest number of players wanting to play professionally, but statistically speaking, they have the lowest chance of actually making it to the NFL. And this is a huge problem with the transition because a lot of student athletes feel blindsided by it. So we sought out to find the predictive factors that are related to the transition. And the number one factor was athletic identity. How much a student athlete thought of themselves as an athlete rather than all the other things they can be. And it was highly correlated with difficulty of transition. The higher a student athlete's athletic identity was, the harder time they had transitioning. And this really is just a limited self concept because they are so much more than athletes, but in their minds, they think of themselves purely as athletes. And this is a huge factor. You know, they could do everything else right, but when it comes down to it, if they are highly set on being an athlete, well, that's going to hurt them in the long run. And when we look at non-revenue sports, there was a contradiction in one study. This came from one institution, and they said that they actually found higher athletic identity within their non-revenue sport athletes, and that could be because they are just playing for the love of the game and they're not actually on scholarship. So other predictive factors: preparation, how well did they prepare for this transition? Education status, how well did they do in school and how involved were they in their studies? Then we look at career development, how much time did they spend actually getting ready for their career? Social support systems, if they had a big social support system in place with administrators and coaches, this actually helped them transition. Satisfaction with athletic performance, if they viewed their career in college as being successful, that made the transition easier. And then timing of career exploration, which kind of talks about what we were talking about earlier with an injury coming up, a career-ending injury, and all of a sudden this person has to transition earlier than anticipated. That can also make it a lot tougher. So then when we look at postgraduate student athletes, we're talking about all NCAA Division I athletes who have earned a bachelor's degree and are pursuing graduate coursework prior to the exhaustion of their athletic eligibility. Now, there are a lot more student athletes these days who are graduating in 4 years or less, and because of redshirt years, they are actually able to spend 5 years in college sports. And we noticed that this number is increasing. In 2019, a total of 3,512 NCAA Division I postgraduate athletes. That's more than any year prior to that. And this is because of the new academic progress toward degree standards, which is forcing student athletes to get more coursework done, more credits done, and they're actually graduating faster. And also the transfer rules have incentivized student athletes to get their degrees sooner so that when they're in their 5th year or their 4th year after they've graduated, they are actually able to transfer to a different school without any penalty. There are student athlete stereotypes that can have negative effects on our student athletes. First, intellectually inferior, the dumb jock, which we all know is not true, but it's still a tag that they have. They also have been stereotyped to have special academic privileges and a lack of academic motivation. And this doesn't just come from students in their class, but it can also come from faculty. And research has shown that this carries over into their personal life or their professional life, where they have lower confidence because they feel like they're not as smart as everybody else that they work with. And this can lead to a lack of confidence where they don't think that they can succeed outside of sports. Now, the research showed that graduate school actually does have a lot of benefits. It provides opportunities, which those opportunities, um, first and foremost, is an increased student identity, which is huge because we talked about athletic identity being such a big determining factor. If we can increase student identity, that'll lower athletic identity, and that'll make a smooth transition. And then they thought of it as a way to prove their peers wrong about the stereotypes. They got professional development out of it, and it almost felt like an internship because they learned so much about their field of study. And graduate school also provided some factors that reduced the stereotypes, like the smaller size classes, the more mature classmates, and discussion-based learning. The student athletes really enjoyed this type of learning and these classrooms because they were able to get on a personal level with these other students, and they didn't feel like they were just this dumb jock, because now they're in graduate school. They've already proven they can get a degree, and they're going even further with it. So future implications for this research, well, there needs to be a creation of transition programs for these student athletes. And within these programs, a huge focus needs to be on athletic identity, since that is the number one factor in research. There can also be professional development. There needs to be career exploration, giving them opportunities to see what's out there so that they can choose what they want to do and feel confident in that. And then outside of transition programs, we just need to encourage our student athletes to pursue graduate school. Go get that bachelor's degree and get into graduate school because it will help with the transition process. We found that it does positively affect student athletes. And then overall, there just needs to be more research on this topic, which I think there will be because it is a new field of interest, especially with the increasing number of graduated student athletes going into graduate school. There should be a lot more research coming out, especially because we see more and more mental health problems with our college student athletes, and it's a problem that needs to be solved. And I hope that people put in the work, and I hope that people do try to help improve this. And lastly, here's my works cited. These are all of the research articles which I perform my literature review on. Thank you.